Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that's often considered a bit, heavy: freedom of religion, or rather the lack thereof. For some people, it's the guiding force behind their entire lives, shaping their values, their choices, their understanding of the universe. But here's the thing, not everyone has the luxury of choosing how big a role religion plays in their lives. Because in some corners of the world, the freedom to practice your faith or not simply doesn't exist. In these places, governments have taken it upon themselves to regulate, restrict, or even outright ban certain religions, often in the name of national security, cultural preservation, or some other lofty ideal. So buckle up, because we're about to take a trip around the globe to explore 10 countries where religious freedom isn't exactly a given. And trust me, some of these might surprise you, but hey, that's kind of what we do here, right? We learn stuff, we challenge our assumptions, and hopefully we become a little more informed about the complex world we live in. Okay, let's get started. Our first stop takes us to the Horn of Africa, to a small nation called Eritrea. Eritrea is a fascinating case study because while it officially recognizes both Christianity and Islam, the government keeps a tight leash on all religious activity. We're talking pre-approved sermons, mandatory registration for religious groups, the whole shebang. And if you're thinking about starting your own little offshoot sect, yeah, good luck with that. The Eritrean government sees any kind of unsanctioned religious gathering as a potential threat to their authority. They view religion as this powerful force that, if left unchecked, could undermine their grip on power. So, what does this mean for everyday Eritreans? Well, it means that even though they might identify as Christian or Muslim, their ability to actually practice their faith is severely limited. Think government-approved imams, closely monitored church services, and a general atmosphere of, shall we say, religious caution. It's a stark reminder that freedom of religion isn't just about whether or not you can believe whatever you want. It's also about whether or not you can actually live out those beliefs openly and without fear. And in Eritrea, that freedom is, unfortunately, in pretty short supply. Next, we're heading over to Southeast Asia, to the nation of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. Now, Myanmar is often portrayed as this land of serene temples and peaceful meditation, but beneath that tranquil surface lies a much more complex reality. Myanmar is a majority Buddhist country, and over the years a particular brand of Buddhist nationalism has taken root, one that often views other religions with suspicion, if not outright hostility. This has led to some pretty serious consequences, particularly for the Rohingya Muslim community. The Rohingya have faced persecution, violence, and even what the UN has called a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. It's a stark reminder that religious freedom isn't just about protecting the rights of the majority. It's about ensuring that minority groups are also free to practice their faith without fear of persecution or discrimination. From Myanmar, we travel to the tiny nation of Brunei on the island of Borneo. Brunei is known for its oil wealth and its sultan, who also happens to be one of the richest people on the planet. But what you might not know is that Brunei is also governed by Sharia law, a strict legal system derived from Islamic teachings. While Brunei does technically recognize Islam as the official state religion, the reality is that practicing any other faith openly is extremely difficult, if not impossible. Non-Islamic religious gatherings are heavily restricted, proselytizing is strictly prohibited, and there are even laws in place that dictate what kind of religious materials can be brought into the country. The government's strict interpretation of Sharia law leaves very little room for religious expression outside the bounds of Islam. Our journey now takes us to the Middle East, to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is a country with a long and complex history, and religion has always played a central role in its national identity. But since the 1979 revolution, Iran has been governed by a theocratic system, which basically means that religious leaders hold ultimate political power. While the Iranian constitution does technically guarantee freedom of religion for certain recognized religious minorities, the reality on the ground is a bit more complicated. Non-Islamic faiths like Christianity, Judaism, and Zoroastrianism are tolerated to a certain extent, but they face significant restrictions on their activities and their ability to practice their faith openly. For example, converting from Islam to another religion is strictly forbidden and can even carry the death penalty. From Iran, we move on to Uzbekistan, a Central Asian nation with a long history of religious and cultural diversity. Since gaining independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, Uzbekistan has been ruled by an authoritarian government that keeps a tight lid on all forms of dissent, including religious expression. The Uzbek government justifies its restrictions on religious freedom in the name of combating extremism and maintaining stability. However, critics argue that these policies are often used to stifle any form of opposition and consolidate the government's grip on power. Religious groups are required to register with the government, and unauthorized religious activities are often met with harassment, detention, and even imprisonment. This crackdown has particularly impacted independent Islamic groups, which the government views as potential threats to its authority. Our next stop takes us to Tajikistan, another Central Asian nation grappling with the legacy of Soviet secularism and the rise of religious expression. Like its neighbor Uzbekistan, Tajikistan has witnessed a resurgence of religious faith since the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, the Tajik government, wary of potential instability and the rise of extremism, has responded with a series of restrictive policies aimed at controlling religious activity within its borders. The government's crackdown on religious expression has particularly impacted the Muslim majority, as authorities have shut down mosques, banned certain Islamic clothing, and even attempted to control the content of sermons delivered in mosques. Our journey through Central Asia now takes us to Turkmenistan, a country often referred to as the Hermit Kingdom due to its isolationist policies and authoritarian government. Turkmenistan is a country where the government exerts near total control over all aspects of public life, and religion is no exception. The Turkmen government officially espouses a policy of religious tolerance, but the reality is that religious freedom is severely restricted in practice. The government's tight control over religious affairs extends to the content of religious education, the construction and renovation of religious buildings, and even the importation and distribution of religious literature. Our journey now takes us to Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Islam and home to the two holiest sites in the Muslim world, Mecca and Medina. Saudi Arabia is a country where religion is deeply intertwined with national identity, law, and culture. As the custodian of Islam's holiest sites, Saudi Arabia adheres to a strict interpretation of Islamic law, known as Sharia, which forms the basis of its legal system and governs many aspects of daily life, including religious practice. While Saudi Arabia guarantees the right to practice Islam freely for its citizens, it strictly controls public expressions of other religions. Non-Muslims are not allowed to practice their faiths openly or build places of worship. Our penultimate stop takes us to China, a country with a long and complex relationship with religion. China is officially an atheist state, and the ruling Communist Party has historically viewed religion with suspicion, often associating it with superstition, foreign influence, and potential threats to its authority. In recent decades, China has witnessed a resurgence of religious faith, with Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, and Christianity all experiencing a revival of sorts. However, this resurgence has been met with a mix of tolerance and control from the Chinese government, which walks a tightrope between allowing limited religious expression and maintaining its grip on power. The Chinese government recognizes 5 official religions: Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, Protestantism, and Catholicism. However, all religious activities are subject to strict government oversight and control. Our final stop takes us to North Korea, one of the most isolated and secretive countries in the world. North Korea is officially an atheist state, and the ruling Workers' Party of Korea maintains strict control over all aspects of public life, including religion. The North Korean government views religion as a potential threat to its authority and ideology, often associating it with foreign influence, superstition, and potential subversion. As a result, religious freedom is severely restricted in North Korea, and open expressions of religious faith are rare. While the North Korean constitution technically guarantees freedom of religious belief, the reality is that religious practice is severely curtailed. So there you have it, 10 countries where the freedom to practice your faith or not isn't exactly a given, from the government-controlled mosques of Eritrea to the restricted temples of China. We've seen how governments around the world grapple with the complex relationship between religion and state. It's a sobering reminder that the freedom to believe, to worship, and to live out our faith, or lack thereof, is a precious and often fragile thing. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Let's keep the conversation going.